Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Parent Academy. Today, we're diving into a crucial topic for young athletes in the foundation years, strength and conditioning. At this stage, it's not about lifting heavy weights or intense training sessions. It's about building a strong foundation using body weight exercises, improving flexibility, and helping kids develop good movement habits that will support them as they grow. To help us break this down, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jesse Wright. Jesse has had an incredible career, including serving as the head strength and conditioning coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. He now runs Balance the Bar, a program dedicated to educating teams and coaches on the best practices in training and performance. Jesse, welcome. We're so excited to have you be a part of the Sports Parent Academy by me, Randi Mahomes.
Randi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm really looking forward to this.
Jesse, when we think about the strength and conditioning for young athletes, a lot of parents assume it's about lifting weights. But at ages 9 to 12, what should strength training really look like?
Well, I'm really glad you phrased it that way, where you said, what should strength training look like? Because there is a great difference between strength training and weight training. All weight training is definitely strength training, but all strength training doesn't necessarily have to be weight training. So in my years before working with the Philadelphia 76ers, I worked for private training centers. We had 4 centers outside of Philadelphia, and we actually did train a younger population, middle school through high school age primarily. And I would always use the example with parents where I think a lot of parents have a vision in their mind when you think about our sons and our daughters in a weight room environment with a big old heavy squat bar on their shoulders and a couple plates on the end of the bar. And that's not necessarily what strength training has to be. But you could do that same exact squat, that same exact movement pattern with a broomstick on the back of a young kid's shoulder and teach them how to squat properly, teach them all about movement efficiency and the right way and the proper technique to do that same exact exercise. So that's what we should think about when we're talking about youth strength training. We have a tendency to assign the same rules to kids as we do from our adult programs, and I think we just have to operate on a sort of a different set of guidelines with different goals towards movement efficiency, towards coordination, the goals of just teaching a young kid that exercise is good, structured exercise is good, and hopefully it's habits that they can build into their teenage decision-making years and then on into adults. And then, of course, we just want to reinforce that all exercise is good in general.
That makes so much sense. What are some simple exercises that parents can encourage at home to help their kids develop foundational strength?
We don't necessarily have to prescribe the same rules and guidelines that we would look at for adults as we would for kids. Now we can, if we wanted to think about sort of maybe a conventional look at what exercises would be appropriate for kids, we could think about what we do in a gym setting, and that would be, the conventional look would be squats and lunges and push-ups and pull-ups and body weight type exercises that we might do that we just sort of employ with our children. And then you move again in a conventional world, you think about plyometric exercise where there are hops and jumps that are very appropriate for children that can help them develop athletically. We would call these extensive plyometrics or short response, and that's sort of these quick response, low to the ground, hopping and exploding or reacting quickly off the floor, line jumps, low hurdle hops, jump rope, those types of quick response stuff. Maybe save the larger plyometrics for a little bit later, the big jumps and the bounds and the leaps, all of that. But then there's a really creative angle that I would love for your audience to consider, and that would implement the fun element to strength training, where maybe we don't do that conventional stuff that adults do, just slightly different, but we take a creative and fun approach. And that's where we can just lean on and look to animals and how they move. And it sounds a little unconventional and a little creative, but how cool would it be as an exercise with our kids where we go on YouTube and we research how animals move, and you can parallel how they move and how they navigate across the earth in exercise analogies. So you could walk, like we all know about bear crawls, we all know about crab walks, but then you look at how an inchworm moves and how that can incorporate full body strength. Or we can look at a scorpion and implement some mobility exercises. Or we could look at a duck walk or a frog leap or any of those types of exercises. They all incorporate full body musculature, upper and lower body coordination patterns, core stability, core strength, but it's in a fun environment. And that's one that a kid is going to keep coming back for regularly.
That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of parents worry about injuries or stunning growth when they hear strength training for kids. Can you clear up some of the biggest misconceptions about strength and conditioning for young athletes?
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned two of them, and these are sort of the urban legends and the myths that have been out there that sort of were invalid and just flat out wrong the day they were communicated. I don't know the origin or the history of it, but the literature and the research has disproven this idea that strength training for young kids is unsafe or that it may stunt their growth. And I would love to point the audience to a few different researchers that have done incredible work in this space. Doctors Avery Feigenbaum, Michael and Meg Stone, and Richard Lloyd all have done tremendous research in this space. And what the research tells us is that when it is qualified by sort of these factors, when it is well supervised by qualified professionals, an organized, professionally designed program, that strength training can be incredibly safe and actually beneficial for kids. This idea that it's going to alter growth plates or stunt growth has been disproven in the research. The idea that it's unsafe, if we just look at the nature and the sort of the fun, organized chaos of just playing youth sports, that's actually a lot more chaotic than the structured, controlled environment of a youth strength training environment, like a weight room or a gym, under the supervision and instruction of a qualified personnel. And then I think a lot of times parents might look to this idea that the only way to get stronger, adults or kids, is adding muscle size. And particularly with kids, that's not necessarily the case. I think that is a big misconception, where it doesn't only have to be bigger muscles that help you get stronger. There's a lot of central nervous system and neuromuscular system reorganization that happens when kids first begin exercise programming. The first one we can look to is just better muscle recruitment, sort of like a hardware versus software argument, where we can improve our software, our ability to use our muscles and our muscle recruitment better just by regular exposure and consistent training. We sort of use what we have a little bit more rather than looking to add more. And then the second one would be this synchronized muscle firing with regular exposure to strength training, consistent, well-designed strength training, that we can, our muscle firing patterns get reorganized, and the sequencing and the prioritization of the optimal sequence actually makes us more efficient in moving, and kids can see very significant strength gains early on in programming just from that reorganization, not necessarily because their muscles get bigger.
As a consultant for CoolMitt, you are a part of a team for an innovation that helps drive strength improvements through thermoregulation and various methods that most parents do not know much about. Can you expand on some of these methods?
Yes, I do. I have the fortunate opportunity to consult for this company, CoolMitt, and that sort of speaks to another misconception that parents might have, where in order to get stronger, you have to add weight to a bar. Well, you can also get stronger and see significant improvement just by adding more volume, more reps per set, more sets per exercise. Again, all qualified by always with good form and proper execution and technique. So using a device like CoolMitt, which just incorporates cooling and core temperature regulation through cooling the palm, in between sets, if you were to implement a piece of technology like that, is actually a great way to add volume, to add reps per set, just by mitigating the accumulation of heat in your muscles. And it sort of delays fatigue. So all of a sudden, if you cool leading up to a set of push-ups or a set of dips or lunges, that all of a sudden you're able to execute more reps with good form just by cooling down your muscles. It's super cool.
I love that. And as kids grow, flexibility and mobility become just as important. How can parents help their young athletes stay flexible and avoid injuries?
Yeah, this one is probably going to be my shortest answer. The concept of mobility, right? This quality of movement, we're all born with it. We've all seen toddlers squat deep and move in all different planes and directions very easily. And we see kids reach all over the place, reach overhead and everything, and they do it fairly well and with great efficiency. And then over time, we pick up some habits. We start to sit at our desks a little too much and some other life habits and everything. And as we age, we begin to lose our mobility. So the simple answer to this is just encourage outdoor play and movement and all these crawling and squatting and movement patterns that happen organically when kids are out playing and they just sort of get out from the desk, get out from under the Xbox or the PlayStation. They get out and move, and it's a great, fun way to encourage flexibility, mobility, and all of that efficiency and quality movement that we had at one point in our lives. We just maybe started doing some things where we lost it. But if you move regularly, this concept, a really interesting and fun term in exercise is this idea that motion is lotion, and it lubricates the joints and it gets us moving very well. And if we just get out and consistently move in fun patterns outside, it's a great way for kids to maintain the mobility and flexibility that we all want them to have.
That's really helpful. Now, I know some parents worry about doing too much too soon. How do we strike a balance between keeping kids active and making sure they don't overtrain or burn out?
This one's tricky and it's really hard to resist, but my first answer to this is resist the temptation to always have structured training in our kids' lives. There are limitless opportunities for supervised instruction, personal training, skill development. We can find people, adults, that will teach kids by appointment or by structured sessions any day of the week, any month of the year. And I think one of the things that can really help burnout or overtraining or anything is just to allow kids to be kids, reduce the drive and the urge to schedule everything all the time, and sometimes just tell our kids to go out and play. Turn the devices off. We're going to get out from the TV, get off the couch, go outside and move around and figure out something to do. And they'll say, Mom and Dad, well, what should I do? And it's not just be outside and figure it out. And you'd be amazed at what kids can figure out. And just that pattern disruption is so good for kids in terms of mental clarity and reducing that burnout feeling that can come from just that consistent structure. The next one is, and it sort of leans on my previous answer, the body doesn't like monotony. The body doesn't like repetitive movement patterns, the same movement patterns over and over and over consistently, over and over for time. So this is a tricky topic and probably one that gets into a lot more depth with a larger conversation, but this idea of specialization and playing the same sport year round, 9, 10, 11 months of the year, that's when we start to get into this repetition of movement patterns where the body doesn't take too well to that. Bad stuff happens when we continue to do the same thing over and over and playing the same sport for months and years at a time without removing it and exposing it to some other pattern disruption. That's when burnout and fatigue starts to happen. So the simple solution is just let's change seasons, right? Let's allow kids to play multiple sports through their through their child years, their early adolescent years. Allow kids to participate in a lot of different activities over and over versus the same one over time. And then the following one is just we know our kids better than anyone could possibly know them. So we look for signs of overtraining or burnout. And those would be maybe more often getting sick, some fatigue type symptoms, sleeping in a little bit more, maybe not as motivated to do the activities that they once loved as it's tied to sports and some of the stuff that we expose them to. Those would be all signs that we want to sort of look for and just kind of watch from the sidelines where, this might be leaning towards a situation where my son or my daughter might be a little bit burnt out with what they're doing. And then at that point, obviously, we want to react and make the right decisions and pull back on the structure and the intensity and the volume that might be a part of their lives at that point.
Jesse, this has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you for breaking this down in a way that makes it easy for parents to understand how to support their young athletes at home. Before we wrap up, where can parents and coaches learn more about CoolMitt and the work you're doing?
Sure, yeah. Well, the first one, to learn more about CoolMitt, you can visit CoolMitt.com. Tons of great information and research on the concept of thermoregulation and core body temperature control through the palm. And then my other work, my consultant, my Balance the Bar initiative, you can visit balancethebar.com. We have courses, we have online mentorships, we have a free coaching app, and that's all about the power of your interpersonal skills as a coach would relate to an athlete. Not just the technical stuff that you know, but also the connection piece and driving impact through your interpersonal skills. So you can find that on balancethebar.com. And then I am most present on Instagram, Jesse K. Wright. And that's sort of the social media outlet that I'm most present on. I'm also on LinkedIn, and all of the emails on the Balance the Bar website come directly to me as well. So be happy to hear from anyone in your audience.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. Remember, the goal at this stage is to help kids develop a love for movement, build strength in a safe way, and keep things fun. We'll see you in the next session.